You're listening to a podcast of Spurious Morality.
Hello and welcome to a podcast of Spurious Morality. I'm Johnstone and we're back for a season by season episode. So with me I have Jimmy.
Hello.
And I have Greg.
Glad to be back.
Yes, it's good to be back. It's really good to be back, and we're doing season 18, and I love season 18. Season 18 is my favourite. If I had to pick one, it's definitely this. There's a few other sort of potential contenders there. 7's very strong, 26 is very strong, New Who 10 is incredibly good, but I think if I had to pick, the one that I would most consistently pick certainly is 18. So I'm really, really glad we've made it to this one. We've got an awful lot to talk about. It's an extra long season. We've got 7 stories instead of 6. So we're splitting this in 2. So we're taking a break at the same time the actual season did, and we're going to stop at State of Decay, and then we'll come back with Warriors Gate a bit further down the line. But that gives us 4 stories to talk about today. But as I said, it is a 7-story season. So let's pick a favourite of those 7 stories. Do you want to go first, Jimmy? What's your favourite from season 18?
I've got to say it's an easy choice. State of Decay. It's my favourite, not just of this season, but of Tom's entire TV era. I absolutely love this one.
It's a very excellent story. It's just full of fantastic moments, and yeah, love it. What about you, Greg?
Well, we're not going to talk about it today, but my favorite season 18 story has always been Legopolis. I know there's a few things about it that, some say hold it back, but I think it is the single most atmospheric episode story that Doctor Who has ever done.
Very, very difficult to argue with that, although State of Decay, I think, is definitely a candidate for that as well. I'll be perfectly honest, I would pick one of those 2. I think State of Decay is an absolutely excellent piece. However, I am going to go for Legopolis because it does just have that little bit more. And, Anthony Ainley's master is fantastic in his first outing. And we do have this sort of doom-laden atmospheric piece where the Doctor knows what's coming and just sort of accepts it. I quite like that. It's that sort of grim acceptance, and it feels like the whole season kind of builds towards that. There's a very doomy atmosphere throughout the whole season, but Legopolis just turns it up to 11. It's an absolutely fantastic story. But as you pointed out, Greg, we're not actually talking about it until the next episode, but not to worry, because we've got some other excellent Doctor Who stories to talk about in this first one. First of which is the Leisure Hive, which I think is sort of a hangover script from season 17, if I'm right. It's certainly when it first arrived on the desk, it was very much a season 17 story, and there's definitely sort of hints of humour in there. There's some great lines, the scarf is caught with the body, so arrest the scarf then, and that kind of thing. It's very difficult to talk about the Leisure Hive without noting how it's completely different to absolutely anything that came before. It really is. This is just Doctor Who is in the 80s now. It's changed. It's very different. The music has gone electronic. There's a new theme tune. The special effects seem to have been pushed up a little bit as well. And we've got a very sort of science-based story, which is something that's obviously going to prevail throughout the entire series. Everything's got some scientific link, certainly more so than anything, certainly in season 17, but sort of before that as well. Odd start, the Leisure Hive. Very strange start. Not entirely sure what the nearly 2 minutes of camera panning along Brighton Beach is there for. There's quite a lot happens in the episode. I don't think it necessarily needs the padding or anything like that. So it's all a bit of a bizarre choice. But I think the Leisure Hive is a story that features a lot of people, or was made by a lot of people, really trying to push the boat out, really trying to do something extra special. It feels like the entire production team has completely embraced that Doctor Who is different now. It's more modern in a 1980 context. It's more modern. It's visually striking. It sounds different, and that sort of doomy, moody atmosphere that we were talking about is definitely. It's there. It's one of the more light-hearted stories of the season. I'm not going to say it's the most light-hearted story of the season because the next story we're going to talk about is about an evil cactus. But I think that season 18 starts really strongly, and I think the Leisure Hive is a sort of bold, confident, perhaps flawed in places mission statement. Never going to be my favourite from the season, but I like this. It's a strong start, and it's a very good example of what Doctor Who is at least going to aspire to be from this point onwards. Greg, do you want to talk to us about the Leisure Hive?
Sure. I mean, I agree with a lot of what you've said there. I think what makes the story stand out is that it makes that firm break with what came before. I mean, everything about it is different. From the opening credits to the theme music to Tom Baker's costume to the incidental music to the way that it's filmed to the tone of it. Like it's just radically different, not just from season 17, but different from all of Doctor Who up until this point. And I think that on its own makes this story worthwhile, because sometimes when you switch to a new era, when you switch to a new method, all the different factors kind of clash with each other as the production team hasn't really figured out how to impart the new tone that they want. But in this case, they seem to have it all figured out from the first minute. I mean, none of this jars with anything else. Like there's a very consistent tone and atmosphere here. Certainly, it's not as downbeat as much of the rest of the season, like you said. But this is not exactly lighthearted material here in the Leisure Hive. I mean, we're dealing with recovery from nuclear holocaust. We're looking at a species that is, as we are told at the beginning, doomed to extinction because they can no longer reproduce. It's very downbeat in its own way. It's just it has a little bit more of a fun tone to it, just thanks to Tom Baker and Lal Ward. But yeah, it's certainly some serious material, and I think it works too because of the seriousness of it. I love the production here, just in general. I mean, the costuming is great. I think the I like the Doctor's new costume. I think when they have Tom Baker, dressed up in his old man makeup, I think it's surprisingly good. I think the Tygellans look good. The Famasi, not the best looking costumes, but the director is smart enough not to just keep the camera pointed directly at them most of the time. So that works, and tries to keep them in the background as these like looming threats. And of course, then to find out that they're just like polite, politicians is kind of funny in its own way. No, I mean, I enjoy this story. I think this is I think this and then especially the next story both get some stick from fandom because they're not part of the E-Space and then the Tom Baker regeneration arc, and they don't really have the same impact as the final five stories here do. But I mean, as a mission statement for 1980s Doctor Who, I mean, I don't know that you can really come up with something much more ideal to draw such a bright line between what came before and what we're going to have going forward. I've always enjoyed the Leisure Hive. It's definitely very good, even if it's the second worst story of the season. That still doesn't mean anything. It's a really good one.
Just got to jump in. You obviously have a slight mistake there. The Tygellans are in Meglos. It's the Argolans in the
Oh,
Leisure
you're
Hive.
right. You're right. You're right. You got me. The Argolans. Yes. Excuse me.
But at least the Famazi were right.
You mentioned Famazi?
So yeah, it's an excellent sort of strong start, and like I said before, a bit of a mission statement as well. It's not the most engaging story, and I agree with you. It's definitely on the weaker end of the season, but this season is just so excellent. It's like saying such and such a story is the worst story of season 7. Well, they're all really, really brilliant. So, yeah, I kind of agree with you. It's almost one of the worst stories of the season by default, just because everything else is even more excellent. So, Jimmy, talk to us about the Leisure Hive.
Yeah, I enjoyed this one, but it does feel very weird with the whole tone being a holdover from season 17, and yet you've got the new 80s titles, which, I mean, I like each Doctor having their own title sequence. It just feels weird seeing Tom with the 80s titles, same as it felt weird with Pertwee in his final season having the Tom titles. So, yeah, it's always a little bit jarring. I love the new costume, but again, it doesn't feel right here. Like, it feels really suited and fitting for like Full Circle onwards, but these first two stories, it just, yeah, it feels like we're still in season 17, so it feels a bit jarring. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I love that they got the proper canine back. I didn't like the other voice in the previous season, and so yeah, it's good to have John Leeson back in it. And yeah, there's not much else to say. I love Tom's old age makeup. They did a really good job there. And again, there's the whole arrest the scarf thing was brilliant. And while they underplay it a bit in the discussion, the dialogue of the 20-minute war leaving the world uninhabitable for 300 years is such a brilliant and horrific concept. They could have played that up a bit more. And yeah, some of the season 17 humour still holding on, like with the Doctor warning the Argolan to look out for the two unauthorised visitors right as he and Romana walked past him. Brilliant. The only really weird thing that I picked up was when the Famasi talk before they get that little translator chip. The Doctor seems like he understands them, but Romana doesn't, which sort of doesn't make sense. Either they both should or they both shouldn't. So, but that's just one little nitpick in an otherwise pretty great story. So, yeah, I mean, as you say, it's not one of the best, but it's enjoyable. It's a good start to the season. Other than that really long and pointless opening on the beach that feels like it lasts an eternity, everything else is pretty great.
Of course, yes. I forgot to mention that John Leeson is back as K9 in season 18, and I definitely prefer John Leeson. He's always going to be the definitive K9, I guess.
You know what else is great about this story is the episode 1 cliffhanger. Oh man, was that great! That's
awesome. Yeah, absolutely. Really sort of solid effect. Yeah. There's a lot of really, really good material in this story. There's a lot of really good stuff, and I think it does sort of get pushed to the bottom of the pile or near the bottom of the pile purely because it's not, as Greg said, E-Space or linked to the regeneration with the Master in it and that kind of thing. But it's really, really strong start, and watching this, I'm really curious as to what's coming next. I like the 80s title sequence as well. It's kind of weird seeing. Well, we refer to it as the Davison title sequence, don't we? But actually, obviously, Tom had it first. it's technically Tom's title sequence that Davison kind of piggybacked on, I guess. But it's good. Tom's default title sequence is always going to be 12 to 17 because that's 6/7 of his run. But yeah, I like this one. It's a great sequence, and I can't remember where now. I think it's on one of the extras on a DVD, Blu-ray, or something. But somebody points out that actually the Tom Baker version of this title sequence is sort of slightly more technically impressive because Tom Baker's outline is. I think the phrase that was used on the disc was something along the lines of more interesting than Peter Davison's, but he's got the hair and the shape of his face and that kind of thing. So it is Tom's title sequence, but we associate it most with Davison because obviously Davison had it for 3 seasons. Let's move on to Meglos. Let's go to Meglos. I unashamedly love Meglos. It's another slightly bizarre one. We've sort of got a mashup of styles, but the interesting thing is that, as far as I'm aware, Meglos was never sort of held over from a previous season or anything like that. It was written for season 18. It is a season 18 story, and it's fun. It has some wonderful moments. It's, for the time, very sort of technologically impressive. There's a whole thing about this new CSO technique that was used on it, and it was kind of the first time it was used. And it works. It looks really good. Is it Zolfathura, the planet? I think it is. That's one of the most impressively sort of presented alien landscapes in classic Doctor Who, and it's pretty much all CSO. Consider that we're only a couple of years ahead from Underworld, where they tried to present an entire alien planet using CSO, and it was god awful. This works. This works really well. So, yeah, there is some really interesting technical stuff here. I think the soundtrack's fantastic. I think the soundtrack to every single season 18 story is fantastic, but there's some really wonderful cues here, and I absolutely love the part, I think it's part 3 cliffhanger, where the Doctor's about to be sacrificed, and there's sort of a big build up in the music, and it's wonderful, really, really good. And again, atmospheric. I think that's a word we're going to use an awful lot while looking at this season. Really atmospheric cliffhanger. It's absolutely bonkers that we almost get to 50% of the story's runtime before the Doctor and Romana even leave the TARDIS. Yet somehow it doesn't feel padded. It doesn't feel particularly strange, to be honest. It kind of works. It kind of fits in with the story. There's a great deal going on, and we need to see what's going on before the Doctor and Romana kind of properly enter the action. And, there is stuff going on with chronic hysteresis, and there is stuff going on with chronic hysteresis, and there is I'm not going to do that anymore. Sorry. So it kind of works. Like, having the Doctor and Romana in the TARDIS for at least the first third of the story seems to work here. I quite like it. And it doesn't feel like the sort of endless TARDIS scenes that we're plodding through by the time we get to Time Lash or something like that. So, yeah, it's another good story. It's probably the weakest of the season. I don't think anyone's going to sort of madly argue with me about that, but it's
I
still
actually would.
Good.
I find Warriors Gate vastly overrated. I
Oh,
haven't got around to rewatching it for this season yet, but if my opinion holds as it used to, I never really liked that one. I would put it behind Meglos, but yeah, Meglos would be the next worst for me.
Ooh, I'm looking forward to getting to Warriors Gate in the next episode now. That'll be an interesting chat.
All right, we're going to have a fight.
It's the demons all over again.
Yes.
Oh, goodness, not that again. That took so much editing to get rid of the swearing. Anyhow, it's. I think it's reasonable to say that Meglos is probably generally viewed as the weakest of the season. It's still very, very, very good. Is the point I was sort of making? It's a really, really good bit of Doctor Who. It's entertaining. It has its quirks. There are definitely some sort of strange little moments in it. Some very strange story logic, and I'm not a huge fan of Jacqueline Hill's character just sort of dying because the plot doesn't need her anymore. But it's pretty decent. Oh, and Tigella is another really well realised alien planet. You know, it's a studio one this time. It's not CSO, but it works. It looks good. It's a believable sort of alien world for the most part. So, Greg, talk to us about Meglos.
I'm not quite as high on it as you are there, but it's still a decent Doctor Who story, and it would probably be middle of the pack in most seasons of the show. It just comes last in this one because of everything ahead of it. Yes, including Warrior's Gate, but but it's interesting. I don't know if it's because we have a one-time writer here or what, but this script just doesn't seem to fit smoothly into any of the various styles of Tom Baker's run. I mean, yeah, I mean there's a lot of humor here. There's a lot of flippancy. It's got some reminiscence of season 17 in that, but then you do have some of the the science forward stuff that you see in season 18, and then with Meglos you have this kind of old classic horror villain. I mean, not that there's a classic horror film about a human cactus, but the way that Tom
And
Baker
we're culturally worse off as a result.
well, yes, that absolutely. In fact, someone should make one. I don't know who, but and that should be the next Robert Eggers, maybe Cactus Man. Anyway, no, I think it that's reminiscent anyway. That villain performance and that style is reminiscent of the Hinchcliffe era. So like, there's a bunch of stuff just kind of smashed together here, and the story is crazy. I mean, yeah, part of it is that the Doctor and Romana don't turn up for much of it, and that's kind of a look forward to what Eric Sayward will do rather regularly with the show. Just kind of have the Doctor and the companion show up in the middle of an ongoing plot that they don't have a lot to do with. The parts of it are like, look, the chronic hysteresis is egregious padding. I mean, it is so clearly there to pad out the runtime of what are already very short episodes, but it's charming. It works. I don't just the strange way that like Tom like stumbles and lands on one foot. I don't know. It's just something that's always, even from when I first saw it as a kid, like that scene just sticks in my head for some reason. I like Tom in this a lot. I think you can see his range certainly because he plays Meglos a lot differently than he plays the Doctor, and it's good to see Tom getting to act a little bit instead of just effectively being himself. That works really well, and Jacqueline Hill's back too, and unfortunately, I don't think her character is very well served by the story, but it's just great to see her back on the Doctor Who screen again. And of course, she was a very talented performer, and that comes across here. It's a good performance. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of weirdness here. There's some ropey stuff, like I agree that like the realization of the planet is pretty good, but like some of the interior sets look absolutely cheap. So it's not great. The seams are showing in place to place, but there's just this bizarre energy and vibe to it, and I did not expect to just enjoy it as much as I did.
I think you've picked exactly the right word there. It's enjoy. Like Meglos is far from perfect, but it's just so enjoyable. because it's an exceptionally unique piece of Doctor Who. You're right, there's nothing else like it at all. And yeah, enjoyable, perfect word for it. Jimmy, what about you?
Well, obviously, being the huge fan of the Hartnell era that I am, the best thing about the story is having Jacqueline Hill back. And obviously, it's not as developed or such a role as Barbara was, but it's fun to have her going full ham as the villain and all. It descended from the heavens. It's brilliant getting to see this whole different side of her as an actor. Um, but yeah, that's easily the best thing about the story. There's not really that much else to say. The next best thing would be the very end, that cliffhanger of, oh, the Time Lords want you back on Gallifrey. Brilliant. Like, it's good that they started to interconnect the stories a bit more in the 80s like they used to in the 60s. Other than that, though, there's not much to say. It's like, yeah, it's really weird. I read somewhere that someone was editing fan edits of the episodes, and they actually decided, oh, what would it look like if it was just the scenes that the Doctor, Romana, and K9 were in, and the whole story gets condensed to 35 minutes, and about half of it is the chronic hysteresis. It's really weird how little they're all involved in the story. And I mean, other than Meglos looking like the Doctor, it's, yeah, the actual Doctor's barely in it. And that's the other weird thing with Meglos. Like, he captures the Earthling to disguise himself, and yet he ends up looking like Tom Baker. It's just really weird. Like, if he's disguised as the Doctor, why does he need the Earthling? And if he's got to take the Earthling, why doesn't he look like the Earthling? It's like there's no explanations actually given. It works because, Tom Baker gives a brilliant performance as Meglos, but it makes absolutely no sense. And then there's other weird little things. Like, I noticed, I guess it's the early days of using the computer sort of imaging and that, but when they pull up the file on the Doctor and there's something about his date of instead of date of birth or whatever, and then there's this weird bit where K9 and Romana are contradicting each other about whether the vegetation is partially incinerated or the leaves are burnt, and it's like, burnt or incinerated, you're saying the same thing. What is this argument? What's going on? But yeah, there's lots of weird little things like that. But there's not really much else to say about the story. I mean, other than those performances and a script that doesn't really hold together, there's not much you can really say. It's not completely terrible. I think it's great to have Jacqueline back, but that and the Gallifrey cliffhanger about it, it's really not that great apart from them.
I think they sort of made a conscious decision to not have any past regulars back in different roles after this one, and I'm not quite sure why. Like, Jacqueline Hill really does work in this, and it's really good to see her play a character that's not Barbara, because the temptation must surely have been there to somehow, for some reason, bring back Barbara. I don't know. Could Barbara have been the Earthly? I don't know. But no, it's great to have her as just a totally separate character, and it does work. And it's a shame that that's something they kind of consciously chose not to do again. Yeah, bit of a shame, but it's really good that we do have this, and it just, I guess, it kind of adds to the sort of unique weirdness of the story as well. Like, we've got a past regular in this, not playing the character. Let's move on. Let's go through a CVE and get ourselves trapped in e-space with Full Circle. The thing that will always amaze me about Full Circle is this was written by somebody who at the time was 17 years old. It is such a sort of mature story. It's a really, really clever story, and it's just absolutely bonkers that it was written by a teenager. Introduces Adric. That's obviously going to be the sort of headline of this, I guess, and Adric works quite well in this. I'm going to set this out now because I'll probably keep referring to it for a few season by seasons. Adric works so much better with the Fourth Doctor, and he works even better with the Fourth Doctor and Romana and K9.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I really like this TARDIS team. I'm really glad we've got a Big Finish series with this TARDIS team, which I actually re-listened to alongside watching season 18 in preparation for this. Yeah, absolutely cracking TARDIS team, and it's only a complete team for 3 stories on screen. And obviously, Full Circle introduces Adric. State of Decay, the Doctor and Romana don't even know Adric is there for pretty much 3 quarters of the story. And then Warriors Gate, they spend a lot of time separate. So they work so well and they have so little screen time together. It's bizarre. However, Full Circle, really good introduction for Adric, full of interesting ideas. Like I say, it's a very, very mature story. I know that obviously it was very heavily edited by Christopher H. Bidmead, but nevertheless, wonderful, wonderful sort of story. Some pretty dark moments in this, that there's the Marshman sort of being experimented on unanesthesed. Is that the correct word? No anesthetic, anyway. And it gets cut into, and you can see the possessed Romana kind of feeling its pain along with all of them, and that kind of thing. Some pretty brutal deaths. It's a pretty brutal story, actually. Yeah, I really like this. Oh, it's a good one for K9 as well. Like, K9 even has his own theme, K9 on a mission. But then, unfortunately, it continues the season 18 tradition of breaking K9, and by, I think it's the end of part 2, he has his head bashed off. So it's a shame K9 doesn't get to shine in the second half of this story as he does in the first. But it's a very, very good K9 story, this is. I think K9's best story in this one will be State of Decay. I think that's the most K9 story in the series, and as a character, I think he does get quite underserved, particularly in his sort of 2 latter seasons. But this has a good moment with trailing the Marshman and all that kind of thing. So yeah, that's Full Circle. It's another good one. It's a great introduction to E-Space. It's a great introduction to Adric, and it's I like the whole hang on a minute, this isn't Gallifrey stuff. It kind of like subverts the we're going to get a Gallifrey story that comes at the end of Meglos, and we get something else as well. And 2 stories before Romana leaves, we are getting some Romana doesn't want to return to Gallifrey development. Like, we're actually sowing the seeds of a companion's exit stories before it actually happens. Sometimes it doesn't even happen episodes before the exit happens. So this is, again, just an indication that there's a little bit of forward thinking going on in this season. So, Greg, talk to us about Full Circle.
I mean, yeah, this is a great story. This would be a classic. This would be top of the heap in several other Doctor Who seasons. And to your point, the fact that a 17-year-old wrote this, I mean, it's unbelievable. And it's especially impressive because, I mean, obviously now decades later, Andrew Smith has kind of settled in as, a regular writer for Big Finish. But it's interesting because, like, a lot of the writing he does for Big Finish is very, very traditional, very, very, in the tone of whatever era, his story is set. But here, I mean, this is something we haven't seen anything like this in Doctor Who before. And yeah, I mean, obviously Bidmead had a hand in editing it, but I mean, this is fantastic stuff. I love the central concept. I mean, I love, finding out you just assume throughout the story that this is the fairly cliched science fiction idea that the ship crashed, and and these are all just the descendants of the original occupants, and maybe, like, it was only the children that lived or something, and then they just passed down this false religion. But then to find out that, well, actually no, like, that they're not there at all. This is the how the life on the planet actually evolves. These are these people are just further evolved versions of the marsh people. It's like that's stunning to me. I mean, that is a twist that you really don't see coming even now. I mean, I think that's not something you've seen done. I'm sure it has been done, but I mean, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head. It's great. I love scenes like the doctor just brushing away all of the different manuals to reveal the actual control panel for the ship, and you could take off and in a couple of days or whatever it is that he says, because there's not that much wrong with the ship and they've just been maintaining it the entire time, because all they have are the maintenance manuals and they don't know anything about how to fly it. Like it's this just interesting, like, portrayal of it's not an the story's not overtly about religion per se, but it's this just interesting portrayal of how they view these books as almost holy, and yet they're doing that with such incomplete information and they don't even understand it. Like, that's fascinating too. The acting in this is great. Tom is fantastic. Lala Ward is great. It is a very good canine story. I like how there's a couple of scenes where they're out in the long reeds, and like when the shot like establishes K9 is just sitting there because obviously he couldn't drive around in um, whatever setting they were in at that moment. But that really works. I really like Tom in this. Like, there's the sequence where the marsh child is there and is scared and frightened, and Tom Baker's the only one who, like, reaches out to it in sympathy while everyone else is terrified of it. And I mean, that's a kind of thing that we see a lot of in modern Doctor Who, but it to see like that just pure, like, humanity and grace is not something we saw very often from Tom Baker's Doctor, even though he was the same heroic character we all know. But that moment was great. Yeah, I can go on about this one. I mean, it's an amazing start to the E Space arc. You're right, Adric is great in this, and he works incredibly well with the Doctor and Romana, like this kind of bizarre family setup, essentially. It works. It's quite effective, and it works for the next two stories, and it continues to work when it's just him and Tom Baker. Now, I've never hated Adric. I mean, I think even when we get into the Davison era, I think he still works. But yeah, I mean, putting him among quote unquote equals just wasn't the same as having him here with parents and/or teachers, or however you want to look at it. So yeah, I mean, I think this is a great Doctor Who story, and like I said, there's a lot of seasons we've done where this would be easily my favorite of the whole run.
We're just dealing with a very, very high bar here. Absolutely. Jimmy, go ahead. Talk to us about Full Circle.
I think it's excellent. It's just so well handled. The whole story of the evolution of the planet and the evolving from spider to marshman into these supposed the Alzarians who are not actually pterodonians like they think. It's just, yeah, they really handled it and seeded it very well throughout the whole story. And I think they did a brilliant job. It's, as you say, it's incredible that it was written by a 17-year-old. And the other things I love is at the start the casual mentions of Leela and Ange and the old canine, and it's just nice to see the show starting to reference its history a bit more rather than just focus on the present. And the other thing at the start that's great is the dynamic between the Doctor and Romana, where the Doctor's being, a bit of an ass to her about how they have to go back to Gallifrey. And I mean, you can understand the moodiness in that about, especially the line about having, you fought Gallifrey before, yeah, and I lost. It's just, yeah, a nice dark tone, like, because you think about the times he has fought Gallifrey, and he lost Zoe and Jamie, get their memories wiped and sent away from him. He gets exiled to Earth and loses his travels, and so you can understand why the Doctor's moody, but it's a bit harsh seeing him sort of taking it out on Romana. And the other thing that was a bit harshly handled was K9 getting his head bashed off, and they basically played it a bit too much as, whoops, oh well. And it should have been taken a bit more seriously, even though they, as they say themselves in the dialogue, he can be repaired. But I mean, it's just they way underplayed it. Like there should have been a bit more reaction to K9 essentially being killed. Other things I liked with this one was that whole line where someone's saying about, oh, you need to be patient, and the doctor's response about, well, patients may. Oh, I've stuffed this one. Sorry, hang on. Edit that out and start me back again. The doctor's line about too much patience goes absolutely nowhere is just such a great quote, and I love those sort of moments to the story. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one, and the fact that they worked the ending so that you don't actually have the Doctor and Romana knowing that Adric is stolen away, and you only find out in the next story. So again, it's that sort of interlinking between the stories of the season. They did a really good job of that, especially in this season.
I think it's that sort of interlink. I think it's one possible reason that sort of the Leisure Hive and Meglos aren't as loved as the rest of the season. It's because they don't particularly have that link. Everything from Full Circle onwards is pretty much directly linked to what came before, what comes after. But yeah, this really does feel like it almost feels like the season sort of restarts after a couple of stories. Like Leisure Hive and Meglos is just normal stuff for the Doctor and Romana. It's just another day in the life of a TARDIS traveller, whereas Full Circle feels like the beginning of a sequence of events that does ultimately lead to Legopolis and the Doctor's death and that kind of thing. It really does feel just so well connected, and I this season does it better than I'd argue any other season of Doctor Who, including New Who as well. I know we've had connecting themes. I know we've had Bad Wolves and Torchwoods and all that sort of thing. But I feel as though season 18 really does feel, certainly from Full Circle onwards, just like it's one big complete story. And the fact that the E-Space trilogy is in some ways a self-contained trilogy that still feels connected to what comes after. It's so well formatted, and it's this really shows how I guess a script editor can really tighten something up and create something pretty brilliant. We've had some absolutely fantastic script editors on Doctor Who. Season 17 we had Douglas Adams, but I think Christopher H. Bidmead, what he achieves with season 18, and it even sort of spills over into 19 with Castrovalva. I do genuinely think it's wonderful, and I think that sort of master plan of his, I guess, really starts to kick in here, and the doomy atmosphere is turned up a little bit, and sort of we're moving on to State of Decay in a moment. Like the atmosphere coming out of that is just wonderful. In fact, let's do State of Decay. Let's move on, because before I go into the rest of I love State of Decay. It's such a brilliant story, and I'm incredibly glad it wasn't made when it was meant to, which was the start of season 15. I think we got Fangrok instead, and the script kind of got put in a drawer and then pulled out of a drawer now, or by Bidmead in 1980, and it works as part of season 18. It needs that sort of grumpy tone, the moody tone. It needs the music. It needs the science and all this kind of thing. It's a far better production than it would have been had it been made when Horror of Fangrok was made. That's the cliffhanger to part one is just fantastic. Sort of the vampires have sent bats out to basically go for the Doctor and Romana, and the bats get, to quote the Doctor, a bit carnivorous. And there's some really sort of wonderful, it's sort of day for night filming, but they were they were going with the idea that E-space is green. So whenever we see the TARDIS flying through E-space, there's sort of a green tinge. And that green tinge is sort of here at nightfall as well. So you've got this sort of green tinge. You've got bats all over the place. I imagine there's a lot of stock footage. They're really, really well represented by sort of electronic sound effects, the music, which is, I mean, the entire score for State of Decay is kind of an embryonic version of the Logopolis soundtrack. And it just all meshes together to create one of the best cliffhangers Doctor Who's ever seen. It's perhaps not immediate danger on the level of, let's say, Caves Around Rosani Part 1, or, it's not story changing like Invasion of Time Part 4. It's just a really good, moody, atmospheric, dark cliffhanger. And I think that that's kind of representative of State of Decay. Like, the whole thing is a really, really good, moody, dark, actually entertaining vampire story. Vampire fiction is all over the place. There's obviously a big thing about it maybe 10, 15 years ago. And there was a lot, but slightly less, I guess, in the early 80s. But it's a good vampire story, and the way it ties vampires into Doctor Who's lore, like, it works really hard and really, really successfully, sort of poses vampires as one of the greatest enemies the Doctor's ever faced. They're the Time Lord's ancient enemy. Rassilon went to war with them, and all of this kind of thing. It's just so, so well done. Like, it does more for Doctor Who's mythology than a lot of other stuff. There's stories I can name that try, and don't succeed in the way that State of Decay does. And what's really amazing is State of Decay also tells an absolutely fantastic story alongside all of that. Last thing I want to mention, that scene where the Doctor and Romana are prisoner, and they just have a chat and, talk about vampires and Time Lord mythology and all that kind of thing. And there's just that beautiful moment where the Doctor tells Romana she's wonderful. It's just one of the best Doctor companion interactions in the entire series ever. It's just such a beautiful scene, and it's amazing where a story with so much going on and so much lore delivery and all this kind of thing, it just stops to have that wonderful moment and just remind us that the Doctor and Romana are just such a really, really flipping good team. And a lot of people say that Warrior's Gate doesn't do Romana's exit particularly well, but I think the fact that, Full Circle has, well, Meglos with the reference to Gallifrey and Full Circle with the Time Lords Want Me Back scene has sort of seeded that Romana's not going to be in the TARDIS for much longer. This scene in State of Decay kind of reminds us how good a team the Doctor and Romana are, and kind of just makes the loss of Romana, Romana leaving in the next story, just that little bit more poignant, I guess. So yeah, State of Decay, as far as I'm concerned, is proper top tier Doctor Who. It's one of the best stories ever, and it's not even the best story in the season that it's in, or at least I don't think it is. So yeah, wonderful, wonderful story. Greg, talk to us about State of Decay.
Yeah, it's terrible. No, I'm kidding.
All right.
It's one of my favorite Doctor Who stories of all 60 plus years of the show. I adore State of Decay. I always have. When I saw it as a kid, I thought it was terrifying, but I thought everything in Doctor Who was terrifying. But watching it again now, I mean, the scenes where the Doctor and Romana are exploring, underneath the throne room and into the ship and finding the bodies and finding the blood and slowly realizing what's going on, there is a building sense of dread there that is pretty much unparalleled in the entire run of the classic show. And it is genuinely chilling. Like, even having seen it God knows how many times. Like I still get chills watching that scene. It's like, oh, this is actually scary. Like this is legit, and it works just so well. What I love that it just embraces the fact that it's about vampires. Yeah, it's a holdover from Hinchcliffe era, certainly. I mean, I know it was intended for season 15, but that time of the show, and you have these like classic horror villains and so forth. But you know, at that point in the show, all of the different monsters they were doing were had very rational horror film explanations for them. Like Morbius isn't Frankenstein. It's a Time Lord, trying to bring himself back by having enslaving someone and having them assemble a body for him out of parts. Whereas in this story, it's like, yeah, it's vampires. Like they are actual, literal vampires, and their motive is they want to suck everyone's blood. That's it. And yes, they do a wonderful job of tying that together into Time Lord mythology. But I love that the Doctor Who universe just has straight up vampires in it. And honestly, I think that's something about Bidmead's era in general that I know I'm not the first one to say this, but people, characterize it as, oh, it's very science driven, it's very science forward. The trappings of it are, but the stories are fairy tale stories for the most part that are just given nonsensical scientific explanations, basically. And I mean, again, here you have a vampire story. The scene in the TARDIS where just the Doctor reading, ticker tape is essentially of the what's going on, and just the way Tom Baker narrates that and reads it, and the even at the cost of his own life line is chilling. Also, like you really get the sense of importance and the sense of danger communicated that way. It's a great story for K9. It's definitely a feature story for him, even though he's mostly only involved in the back half of the story. He's still great. It's a great Romana story. What I love about Lala Ward in this is that it's not like really explicitly characterized, but as she's settled into the role, I mean, we've seen Romana get more confident and more doctorish as her tenure has gone on. But here, like, she's out of her depth and she knows it, and she's visibly terrified. And Lala Ward really plays scared well. It's yeah, the set design is great. The location filming, the darkness of it is great. The stock bat footage somehow works much better than it has any right to. The music is astonishing. It's one of the best incidental scores Doctor Who's ever had. I cannot say enough good things about this story. Like I really can't. And the fact that I agree that it's not the best story of the season really just tells you the level of quality we're working with here. And I can't wait to talk about the second half of season 18 because this has been so good so far.
Absolutely. It's worth mentioning that the music from this was used in a vampire episode of the Gallifrey series, Big Finish, and again, it's just amazingly effective. It's just the music from this story is just sublime. It's so brilliant, and that's essentially now Doctor Who's vampire theme,
What
and
amazes me
it's
too
great.
what amazes me too is that we've never come in the TV show. We've never gone back to this. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, they've done it in Big Finish and so forth, but like, this mythology of these great vampires and the ancient war with the Time Lords, like, I mean, that's like an easy Doctor Who script for the modern show about the Doctor battles vampires who are back after the Time War, and I honestly can't understand why they haven't done it because it seems like such a slam dunk.
we even had a vampire story, and it wasn't proper vampires. It was fishing chameleon circuits and that kind of thing, wasn't it? I
And the
cannot
old lady with the
believe.
straw.
Yes. Oh, yes, of course, yes, the
Yes,
plasmavore as
yes.
well.
I
Yeah,
guess is a
it just
vampire plasmavore, but come on,
yeah,
let's get some real let's get
yeah,
Count Dracula. Let's get Bela Lugosi.
yeah. That's the State of Decay vampires. Yeah, it is genuinely baffling that they've never ever ever gone back to this, because there's so much to play with there. I know sort of having Gallifrey around and doing Time Lordy stuff isn't particularly in vogue, but come on, vampires in Doctor Who, and it worked in State of Decay. It can work again. It should work again. Jimmy, State of Decay then. You said it was your favourite. Excellent choice. Talk to us about it.
I think the thing that makes it my favourite of the Tom Baker era is the way it's a sort of blend of all the three sort of sub-eras he's got. I mean, obviously Hinchcliffe Horror Vampires, obvious, fits in with season 18 and the mostly more scientific tone, but also the sort of darker and, you're heading towards the regeneration and that. But at the same time, there's also a hint of the Williams era with the dynamic between the Doctor and Romana, like the bit at the start, you mentioned the bit where he calls Romana wonderful and she says she hasn't really thought about it. And of course, in the first episode, you've got the inverse of that where she calls him incredible and he says he's never thought about it. And then you've got the bit later where they're going down into the caverns and the Doctor just, oh, and Romana looks scared as anything. What's happened? And it's just, oh, you jumped on my toe. And talking about the throne room and would you call it Rococo? No. Yeah, it's just the perfect blend of like Hinchcliffe, Williams, and the current season with Barry Letts. It's just such a perfect blend of all the different parts of his era. There was no way it was ever going to turn out to be anything less than wonderful. And yeah, the dynamic between the Doctor and Romana is simply brilliant at its best. And there's lots of good lines too. Like I love the bit where so you serve the Lords. What do the Lords do for you? Getting very political there, and the whole atmosphere and K9 getting to call Adric immature humanoid, which is just the perfect description, and doing the title drop so heavily with I've never seen such a state of decay. And of course, you've got to love the completely unexplained and barely hinted at the wasting is the wasting. It's just, the tone, the atmosphere, the vibes, the way the planet is set up, the whole culture that's primitive as anything that's descended from this great, spacefaring Earth age, and the whole castle being just their rocket and being used to stab the vampire through the heart with essentially an oversized stake. It's just, it's such a very Doctor Who take on the vampire genre, and it does it spectacularly. I just absolutely love everything about it. And the other thing that's a nice touch is usually Adric's costume looks so silly, and so when he gets the vampire get up, it's actually very cool. I wish they could have kept that costume. It absolutely suits him far better than his silly pajama look ever did. Yeah, I love this story. Just brilliant. Brilliant through and through.
Just to interject here real quick, you mentioned the political part of it. One of my favorite lines in all of Doctor Who is in this when Romana asks the three who rule, so what is it you do for your people exactly, apart from protect them from gluttony, which is the best description of starvation I've ever heard.
Yeah, that was great. I loved that one too.
I think you're really onto something, Jimmy, about the how it is it kind of cherry picks all of the strongest bits of Tom Baker's 7 years in the show and kind of distills them into one story. You're absolutely right. We're seeing literally the best of Tom Baker here. It's such an excellent story, and an excellent story for us to end on in this episode. So we're going to be back, carrying on with season 18, and we're going to talk about Romana's exit. We're going to talk about the Doctor's regeneration. We've got all sorts to chat about in the next one. But it's what a really, really, really good start to a season this has been. We've talked about 4 brilliant stories, and there are still 3 very, very excellent stories. Sorry, Jimmy, but Warriors Gate is excellent.
Two.
To come. So we'll leave it there for now, and we will pick up with Warriors Gate. It feels like we're ending on a cliffhanger, doesn't it? Just like, tune in next week to find out exactly what Jimmy has to say about Warriors Gate. But yeah, in the meantime, we shall leave it there. But yeah, I've really, really enjoyed this one. I really, really enjoy this series, this season, I should say. And it's been great to make a start on it. And this feels like a real milestone for season by season as well. I've been saying all along, I can't wait to get to 18, and here we are. So I will say a huge thank you and goodbye to Greg.
Yeah, I've been wanting to get to this season since we started doing this, and it's been just as good as I thought it was going to be. We'll see you for part 2.
Yeah, can't wait. Huge thank you and goodbye to Jimmy as well.
Thanks, it's always a pleasure.
We will be back with the rest of season 18 and for more spodcasting very soon. Goodbye now.